Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Creatives of Windsor Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Sherdown, and today I'm sitting down with our mayor, Drew Dilkens.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes,
Thank you, studio.
thank you. Thank you very much for coming on. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you is kind of back to the beginning of your career. Like, how did you get into politics from the start?
Well, I think I can trace it back to when I was a real young lad. My great uncle was the alderman for this particular area in South Windsor, Marty Goldberg. And I remember Marty at the time renting. Transit Windsor had two old double-decker red buses in the back lawn. If you drove down East Row Expressway, you'd always see these two double-decker buses parked back there. And unbeknownst to me, he rented one of these buses. He put signs on it and, made the Marty Goldberg bus. And then all of the family came out for one day, like a big blitz going up and down streets in South Windsor. And I showed up and there was this bus and all of this energy and excitement. I thought, oh my gosh, this is really cool. And he won that election. And so I always say that's kind of where I caught the bug. But my journey, is, I think in some ways, people would say, oh, it's kind of a typical journey where in high school I was on student council and always involved in the community, whether it was president of Crime Stoppers or all sorts of other organizations. And I just had an interest in city council. So I ran in 2003. I was unsuccessful. I came in third. And at that time, they took the top two candidates. And so Joyce Zuck and Dave Brister were successful that year. And then the election cycle was 3 years back in 2003. So the next election was 2006. And I had worked my butt off in 2003, knocking on like thousands of doors. I started in the spring. I worked entirely through the summer and right up to election day. Like I worked a lot trying to get my name out. And Ward 1 at the time was massive. Like it was a giant ward in the city of Windsor. And so when I went back in 2006 and started knocking on doors again, people were like, oh yeah, I remember you. Oh yeah, we already had a conversation. Yeah. No, I'm going to vote for you. Like that recall was there. And so I found it not incredibly easy, but incredibly refreshing that all the hard work had paid off in 2003, that in 2006, I was successful.
And that you were the counselor for Ward 1 for 2 terms?
Yeah, for 2 terms, 8 years. The cycle changed to 4 years in 2006. So it was 2 terms. And then Eddie Francis, my predecessor, was ending his run as mayor, and I said, "Hey, I think I'd like to try this." And so I ran to replace Eddie and was successful, and I've been there for 11 years.
Yeah, that's great. I can't believe that. I'm sure it feels even quicker for you, but I remember when you ran the first time, it feels like it was not 3 terms ago.
I know, it really, and I think part of it is dog years when you get into things like COVID and some of the other challenges that we've had. Some of it goes really fast, but when you look back, you're like, gosh, that felt like it took forever. At the same time, we've seen incredible growth in the city, and it's been just really exciting to see where we started and where we are today. And putting a hand on that and trying to lead the community has been absolutely the pleasure of my life.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, to do it for for 3 terms and 12 years, like you must have a passion for it and really enjoy working in politics, I'm sure.
Like every job, there are good times and bad times. And of course, you read social media and it just brings you down a hole if you let it, right? But you stay away from that and you say, listen, let's just focus on the things we can control. And you think of the times, just think of before Donald Trump came in and where we were at with the battery factory, all of the supply chain, the incredible investment. We had 1,000 people moving to Windsor every month for about 6 months in a row. We had net population growth, something we hadn't seen in a long time. We saw more housing being built than we ever saw, but there was challenges on the other side of that as well, with costs escalating for housing and some of the other pressures with international students, which drove up the price of real estate because they were competing for the same homes to live in, while they're going to the university or St. Clair College. But all of those things that we could control, I would submit that, we were really on a great track. Enter Donald Trump, and he has added a whole level of uncertainty to the whole world. It's not just us here in Windsor, Ontario. It's the whole world that's trying to deal with, the chaos that he creates.
Do you have any crossover with? So, like, actually, well, let's keep it more local. How much interaction do you have with? I'm sure you interact a lot with our local MPs and MPPs, but do you have a relationship with the Premier and the Prime Minister as well?
Yeah, lot of interaction on a weekly basis with our MPs and MPP Dowie, especially because he's a great pipeline into the Ford government, and we've seen a lot of success. And Doug Ford, I think he's been to Windsor, Essex, probably more than anywhere else outside of the GTA. Like, he loves this area, and he has our back. And you've seen that in so many of the investments. I mean, the hospital being the biggest one. Like, he just said, get your house in order in terms of location, and I'll be there for you. And he was. And that was before we had an MPP. And so now we have someone at the table helping to drive the bus provincially is great. I have a great relationship with the Premier. We work really well together, talk to him all the time. I haven't had a chance to meet the Prime Minister yet. He's obviously, when he took over, he's been incredibly busy dealing with Donald Trump and the issues that he's trying to deal with, which are quite consequential for our country, but also for our community. And so I anticipate we'll be able to see the Prime Minister at a future big city mayors meeting. We get together a couple times a year, all the big city mayors in Canada. And quite often Justin Trudeau would attend those meetings, and we have a chance to talk as a group. And I would expect the Prime Minister would do the same thing relatively soon.
Trudeau came into office as Prime Minister right around the same time that you were elected as mayor, right?
Yeah.
So you guys, I'm sure, ran into each other over the years as well.
Many times. Me talked to him many times and met with him many times. So, yeah, I mean, it's important that you have those interactions just to be able to share information on what's going on in the community. Of course, every mayor is going to advocate for improvements in their own community. So you've got to pick your battles on what you're going to fight for, and what you think you can get done, and most importantly, how the things you would like to get done align with and give the federal government or the provincial government a win as well. And so in many ways, a municipality really has to align its goals and objectives with the goals and objectives of higher levels of government, because they have the money. And if your objectives aren't aligned, you're probably not going to get any of it.
Do you think that, like, you obviously got into municipal politics. Do you think that you would ever get into like politics where the party's involved?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me. I'm really driven at the local level. I think that's where the rubber hits the road, and you can get a whole lot more done. You're far more, without being disparaging, it just feels far more effective on a daily basis to get things done. Like when I talk to school groups, I have this little speech that I go through, and I say, what's the first thing you do when you get up in the morning? And everyone looks around, they say, well, unplug my phone. Okay, the power that was, charging your phone, who brought the power to your house? The city, effectively, through N1. Then you go to the washroom, you flush the toilet, who cleans and who takes care of the sewers and all the dirty water that you send in the toilet system. You have a shower, who takes care of all that water, maintains the pipes before it goes back in the Detroit River? The city. Pull the tap on, brush your teeth, clean water comes out. Who brings the clean water? Who treats the water from the Detroit River? Takes care of the pipes that brings it to your house? The city. Then you get out and you get on a road, a sidewalk, you ride a Transit Windsor bus. Who takes care of all those things? The city. After school, where you go to a park, you go to Adventure Bay, you go to a community center, the city. Do you have a problem? Police, fire, ambulance. Who maintains, emergency services? Effectively, the city. And so they realize very quickly that, the level of government that's closest to the people for the services they rely on most every day, it's the municipality. And so you really have a chance to make a difference, I think, at the municipal level, at the provincial and federal level, really important levels of government. But your ability to, get a lot of things done it's more nuanced with respect to what the leader and what caucus wants to get done. And so important folks to have and representatives to have. I just really like the municipal level.
Yeah. It sounds more fun, and that was a good example of you make a more direct impact into everybody's lives than
every day.
Yeah,
every day for most of the services they use, it's the municipal level every day.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you mentioned a minute ago. So I've been running my business for the last decade now, and I've noticed this a lot over the past few years. So when I would drive around the city, just running my business 10 years ago, there was never traffic. I could drive around at 3 or 4 o'clock and I could get everywhere. Now there's traffic like crazy, and a lot of people are upset by the traffic, but I love it because the more people, the better business for me. And my business has grown exponentially over the years, as any business would in 10 years. But I think a lot of that is due to how many more people we have in Windsor. Is Windsor's population still growing in 2025?
So it's really leveled off now.
Okay.
Partly a function of, I would say, in large part, a function of greater immigration control at the federal level. And so even post-secondary institutions who were given a certain cap, dialed back the cap on international students that they could allow into their programs. Even a lot of the applicants are not getting their visas processed fast enough. And so the St. Clair College, University of Windsor, by and large, aren't even hitting the quota that they've been given, not because they're not doing great work, but it's because the federal government's really slowed down on processing immigration applications. We've seen what's happened with Donald Trump and the uncertainty. We had people moving here and with a lot of excitement because of the battery factory and all of the things that were happening. That has really slowed down. We don't see out migration, so people are staying, which is great. But that really has slowed down as a result of some of the uncertainty and everyone just saying, let's figure out what the landscape looks like before we make any big moves like selling a house and picking the family up and moving somewhere else.
Was a lot of our immigration, was it a lot of international students and refugees, like new people to Canada, or was our people over the last 5 or 10 years, were people from other parts of Canada coming to Windsor as well?
Both. And so we had a huge amount of influx with international students from St. Clair College and the University of Windsor. We did see refugees. Ironically, when Donald Trump was talking about, needing to put tariffs on Canada for fentanyl and border security, I would look out my office window at the Best Western where there were 750 people, refugees living, waiting for their cases to be processed by the IRCC, the Federal Immigration Department. And so but clearly we all know that we're not a source of the problem. We're dealing with the same problem he was with all of those folks crossing illegally at the southern border of the United States. And so you also have people who live in the GTA and Brampton and places like that where the price of real estate is really high. And I know for folks in Windsor, they say, gosh, 10 years ago, I could have bought a house for, you know, an average house was probably $200,000 in Windsor. Now they say it's $550,000 or $600,000, and that's a dramatic increase. It's actually relatively good compared to the GTA. Like we're still in good shape. It's just hard for us to understand that because we only know what we know locally. But you've seen a lot of folks from the GTA leave the GTA because they want to come to places that they can afford a house and actually, set up shop and set up their life. And so it's really positive because you don't do that just for the price of housing. You have to know that there's employment. You have to know that quality of life is good. There are a number of reasons people choose different communities. And so to see 1,000 people move here every month it was 6 or 7 months in a row. I mean, it really spoke highly, I think, of the value that they saw in our own community.
Yeah, I've always lived in Windsor. I've never left. I grew up here and I went to Holy High School and I went to St. Clair College and everywhere. And I've always loved it, but I like where we're going. And I always say it's the perfect size city. It's small enough where it's easy to, navigate and know everybody and run a business, but it's big enough where there's money going around and things to do, right?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because in my inaugural address in 2022, I talked about the transition that I think we're experiencing right now, and it's the move from being a big small city to a small big city, and it's actually it's a real big difference when you think of the transition that we're in, and a part of it is just thinking of ourselves as a small big city, that we're no longer this little tiny place. Like our geographic area, it's not just the city of Windsor, it's all of the surrounding areas and the employment and everything else that exists within Essex County. We're 500,000 people, and that is bigger than the size of the city of London. And so we actually are of a size and scale where, we can command more attention and deserve more attention because you see the activity that's happening here, and a lot of it's like really, really exciting.
Yeah, and some people don't notice the like how fast things grow, but my grandfather who's 80 was born in the West End and he still lives over there. He always tells me about my street. It was Sandwich South was the neighborhood, and
Yeah.
he's like, I remember when they put those houses up and they didn't have a lot of money in that area, and then it became Windsor, and he's like, I remember when it was farms when I was a kid, and then you look at like how much it's grown and like like Cabana now and Dougal now and
Well, it's only been a few years, to your point, only been a few years since we actually upgraded Cabana Road.
Mhm.
And Cabana Road looked for many years that, sort of one lane in each direction. It was what it looked like back when it was Sandwich South, with the ditches on both sides. And like there weren't a lot of improvements. And so now you see a a 4-lane road with, bike lanes and sidewalks and curbs and gutters and all the things that, the average person probably doesn't think a whole lot about. It's not sexy stuff putting in road projects, but you can see the evolution and the growth to be able to handle traffic. And Cabana Road, we're just going to continue building. We've renamed County Road 42 in front of the airport. It's actually all Cabana Road from the far end of the city on the east to the far end on the west. And so we're going to keep moving forward with construction on Cabana Road. We got to get ready for the growth that's happening out by the airport. You see the Mint development happening. There's more growth coming with respect to employment. And we know the hospital's coming. And just south of the airport, we also have a housing development that's been in the works for many years, getting all the environmental and the elevation studies and everything that they require to move forward. But it's over 5,000 different units that can be built there. So we've got to get the infrastructure in place to be able to support that growth. And it's good news that we're growing, frankly.
I remember seeing something, and I'm not very well educated on this. I only saw it once or twice, but you had mentioned that, or the city had mentioned that the Cabana growth and all that stuff. And are we putting up new apartments on Cabana in those spots?
So, well, depends where you're talking about.
Okay.
So south of the airport, you're going to have a massive subdivision in there. It's going to be more than 5,000 different units. It's going to be a mix of single family homes, multi-story buildings. It's going to be a full subdivision of different types of living. There was some concern on Cabana Road from Dougal, say, to Mount Royal, where that corridor, folks were, looking at doing different types of development, which were off-putting to many of the neighbors because some of it's different than what we see today. And so what we have done, as what City Council is doing, is actually changing the designation of that corridor because it will go back to the Housing Accelerator Fund and talk about what we said we were going to do. We're going to change the designation of that corridor to limit the types of growth that we can see between Dougal and, say, Mount Royal, Dominion, because we want to be practical with the neighborhood and be realistic with the neighborhood that is in existence there now. We're not trying to build giant towers and you've got single family homes, on both sides. We got to realize the growth in a different way, especially in that particular section. So we're working on putting the tools in place that allow us to do that. But the reason we're even getting there, going back to the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is a conversation we had in the community about fourplexes everywhere and allowing that to happen, we said no to that. We don't want to see fourplexes as of right allowed on any residential property, but we didn't say the whole program was bad. It was just that element which they added after we submitted our application, and they changed that requirement after we submitted our application and made that the minimum ticket to entry, surprising to us. There were a lot of other good takeaways there. And so we did go through the exercise and we looked at looking at city-owned land and what we could repurpose. We've identified 8 or 9 different parcels of land that we own that we want to repurpose for housing. But one of the central takeaways was we're not afraid of densification or growth. We actually want to support that, but we want to do it in the Windsor way. And the Windsor way was, let's look at our transit corridors. So we had about 48 kilometers of transit corridors where we could allow growth as of right along those particular corridors. People could live next to transit. It would be easy to get around then. And then we identified over 1,000 acres of land, whether it's mixed use nodes, commercial corridors. Think of places like Devonshire Mall or strip plazas, strip mall plazas, where you could actually have retail on the bottom and you could go up 26 stories in some of the areas as of right. And we said, we're in favor of that. We want to see and encourage that kind of thing to happen. And so Cabana Road got picked up because it is a transit corridor. But when we looked at it, we said it's different than a lot of other transit corridors, and we want to be sensitive to the type of development we see between Dougal and Dominion.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because it's all houses there, whereas like the mall, for example, is more commercial.
Exactly.
That makes sense. This kind of brings in, before we get into some art questions, this brings in one more question. So as somebody who, I built this to work from at my house, and my wife works in an addition in the back as well. And I know that there's a lot more, like the restrictions for ADUs have been more laxed over the years to help with the housing crisis. Are there plans to relax those restrictions even more? Is there always adjustments being done to what is allowed for an EDU?
I'm not aware of any further relaxation of the provincial government's considering. That was really a provincial mandate. So the province, we said no to 4 as of right. That's not allowed anywhere.
Okay.
But the province had already come in and said, we'll allow an ADU, which is basically the additional dwelling unit or 3 units as of right. And we've seen some uptake on that. In some of the areas where you've seen it, it's been uncomfortable for the neighbors, and it's generated some level of issue in some neighborhoods. Some places you see it, you don't even know it's there. And so it works in some places, not in all places. But I'm not aware of the province. Matter of fact, I would stick my neck out to say I don't think you're going to see Doug Ford move forward. He was here in Windsor just a couple of weeks ago and gave us a check for $5.2 million because we exceeded our housing goals last year by 213%. And so we got $5.2 million from the provincial government, and he was very clear at the microphone to say that hold firm, like 4 as a bright. He doesn't support that. So I don't see his government moving forward with that.
Okay. I guess with the like the international students coming in, going down, I guess that isn't as big of an issue to make restrictions more relaxed.
Yeah, it certainly takes the pressure off. But listen, every time you tweak a system, there's always someone out there who's figuring out how to maximize or work within and whatever the rules are. It's kind of human nature, and we have seen situations where, in certain neighborhoods around the university, as an example, where with the existing rules, you could have like a 30-foot frontage lot, 30 or 35-foot frontage, and a developer is putting in 3 stories, so 3 different levels allowed, as long as it's not higher than 9 meters as of right, and 4 bedrooms in each unit. So you could have 12 different people living on a 30-foot frontage lot. The city has no real control over the parking allowances, which is something that, obviously would impact neighborhood and street parking. And can create some chaos as well. And in some ways, we're not entirely, because of the existing rules, not entirely in control of that. And so we're sensitive to that because we want to support growth. Everyone recognizes people have to live somewhere. We don't expect them to live on the street, but how do we do it in a smart and sensible way? And I think there are ways through that. And so it's been a balance, and you've seen some, uncomfortable conversations between city council and the community, where the community's pressing us to say no to certain projects because their right to appeal has been taken away, and they feel left without a voice. And so council is put in an awkward position because we know in some cases, just based on experience, that if we say no to something, we'll make the residents feel good in the short term. But if you're the developer and you own the property, you file an appeal, there's a 99% chance in a lot of these cases, they're going to win. And we know they're going to win. And so it's this balance of saying, do we show the residents that we support them, knowing that we're only delaying the project for, 6 months or 8 months? Or do we say, no, like this is the way it needs to be, and the rules have changed, and it's a real difficult political conundrum, because you always want to support your residents.
Yeah.
Right. And in a lot of ways, things have changed beyond our control, require us to allow certain things to happen. And if we fight it, a lot of times we know we're going to lose, and it's frustrating for the developer. It's frustrating for the residents. And at the end of the day, they're going to be frustrated with city council because they don't get the outcome that they want.
It's definitely hard to please everybody. I'm sure that's incredibly difficult being a mayor of 300,000 people or whatever we're at. How in your, you're pretty seasoned as being a mayor now, like 3 terms. Like, how do you deal with criticism of people who don't agree with you? Because those people speak louder, right, than the ones who do, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I think here's how I deal with it. I don't mind if people disagree with me. I actually would love to have an intelligent conversation based on facts. And if I change, I will say my mind changes when the facts change. So give me some facts to change my mind. And some people have that. They're really well researched, and they say, but listen, you're not thinking about this, or you've not considered this. And I've changed my mind and said, you know what, you're right. I didn't understand that. I'm going to change based on this information. It's when people come out and they go right for the jugular and they're rude and inconsiderate. That's when I just set them aside and move on. Like if you're going to approach any conversation being rude and inconsiderate, then there's not enough time in the day to deal with that. And so I think it's probably just basic human nature. If you approach me on the street or knocked on my door and started swearing at me, then I'm probably just going to shut the door. Like, I'm not gonna deal with you, right? Like, why would I? And so some people think, oh, you're a politician, you have to take everything. No, we don't. No, we want to have thoughtful, considerate conversations. We live here too. I pay the same taxes that everybody else pays. Everyone on city council pays the taxes as well. So they're sensitive to adding additional costs, and, they're sensitive to the things that they do that drive costs to the bottom line. And so we live here. We want a great community. We're all part of the same team. We appreciate being elected, but, let's work together to find a solution. And if we agree on everything, fantastic. If there's times when we don't agree, let's at least be respectful that this particular topic we didn't agree on, but let's work together on, other topics moving forward.
Yeah, I agree 100%. One last question. To be a city councilor, you have to live in the city, right?
Right.
But you don't have to live in your ward?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the same goes for the mayor, obviously. Like, you're not allowed to live in LaSalle?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you must be an elector in the municipality that you're running at.
Gotcha. And you cast a vote as well when you run, right? Correct. You still get to cast the vote.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you go and your name's on the ballot and you can, put the X next to your own name. It feels kind of good.
Yeah, that must be fun. So this is most of the guests I have on this podcast are creatives in the city, from musicians to artists and all that stuff. So I would definitely like to ask a couple questions about our SUI. So we have the ACHF grant, which I've been awarded once, and I think is a wonderful program. My first question for that, where does the funding like that come from? Does it come all from our city, or?
Yeah, it comes from our cultural affairs budget. So we just increased the ACHF. I think we're up to about $118,000 a year. Since 2014, I know we've given out more than $1.1 million to a variety of different types of artists, performing arts, music arts, visual artists, like you name it. We've helped fund lots of different projects. We even enhanced it during COVID, recognizing like this was a tough time. We wanted to help folks get through even in a small way. I mean, the maximum amount that we give out is $5,000 for any given project. And, the goal with ACHF is to actually make art public. So we want the public who are funding these projects to be able to experience them in some way. And so there may be ways to improve it. I'm all ears on how we can make it better. A lot of people would say, well, add more money and, do more. That's sort of the typical thing you hear of government, add me more money, I could do more. But we've slowly dialed it up, and I think it's been really interesting. And we continue to do other things outside of ACHF. You would just open the Civic Square, and so we had every Friday night music in the square at City Hall, which I think went over really, really well. Yeah. And we gave a bunch of performing artists, the musician really, an opportunity to play at City Hall outside, and people were bringing their lawn chairs and enjoying the new space that we created. So, but ACHF is important, and we in City Council loves looking at that program and seeing what comes from it.
I really do like how, say, for example, if somebody does ask for the max 5,000, sometimes they will say, you're approved, but we'll give you 3, which is nice to help allocate funds to more artists.
Yeah.
So that is a nice thing. How often would funding for something like that increase? Like, is there anything coming up where it would increase for something like that?
So we did increase it this year. I think it was $118,000 a year that we're giving out. That has gone up. We were somewhere. I think that went up 10 or 15%. The last year or so. Hey. And so, as with most things at City Hall, I hate to use the term, but you boil the frog slowly. Like, there's little increases that you try and deal with all the different service areas. Culture is important to us. Think of the things that we've done to celebrate Windsor's heritage and history and culture, and I can go back to Tecumseh and Brock and Hiram Walker and Rosalie Tremblay, another stellar individual from the community. Streetcar 351, which was launched this year, and the Beacon, celebrating that part of our history, the Civic Square, and the artist performances there. ACHF, of course, we, as a municipality, own the Capitol Theater, and we have the Windsor Symphony Orchestra operate that for us, and they get to keep the revenue. So it's a way for them to make some money. We actually own, as a city, the Art Gallery, Art Windsor Essex building. Still call it the Art Gallery of Windsor. And so the Art Gallery Windsor building we own, and there are tenants there for 49 years for $1 a year. We pay all the bills, and so we support the visual arts and there as well. And so we are invested, even if you don't see it all. We are spending money on the arts in our community. We can always do more, and I'd love to understand ways that we could even, if there are things happening in other communities that are impactful, I'd love to understand that to see how we can help support some of those things.
Yeah, we'll have to hear from listeners of the podcast, like any of their ideas for anything specific. For someone like me who likes to just go around the city and enjoy art, I feel like there's so much that I miss, that I don't even hear about. So I'm not even looking for more. I'm just trying to make sure I know everything that's going on. I would love like a designated something to get the word out even more. Because even I miss things, and I'm pretty involved in the community. So
Listen, I it's funny you say that because just 2 weekends ago there was this Asian food festival down in Festival Plaza. I had no idea. I had no idea, and I love Asian food. I mean, it's sort of whenever we go out for dinner, it's usually for Asian food as a family. We love it, and so I'm like, I had no. Someone said, "Oh, I went and it was great." I said, "I had no idea it was even happening." So I hear you. Like, you've got to find a way to share a lot more of this information, because I think sometimes there's probably overload on social media, and it's easy to miss things too.
yeah, and the algorithm, like when people log into their different apps, and the way they get news is through, unfortunately, like I try my best to go on like the Windsor Star, CTV Windsor, because like you go through Facebook and Instagram, and sometimes that stuff just doesn't come up.
Yeah.
And then with all the media ban across Canada, you really don't see that stuff. So,
Right.
that's
That's over. So
yeah,
it's
I hope so too. That's a federal, yeah, that's a federal thing.
yeah, it's a federal thing, and I get it. They want them to pay, and I get the tug of war that's going on. But at the end of the day, I just want to be able to share things and receive things as well. It's a little frustrating not being able to do that.
Yeah, I don't think they've Meta's gonna fold on that if it's been 2 years now.
I don't think Canada's going to be changing the game in terms of Meta's bottom line in that regard. But we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see when we get there.
I hope it goes soon because it's still like a lot of people. You know what? I'm really thankful. So Windsor Police, I think they've realized that, and they just do their own stuff now.
Yeah, I think they screenshot stuff and they put it out, which is a good way to do it, get around it.
And they write things like they must have some writer like in a news way. They'll say like they'll put this happened and make it like a news host,
Yeah.
which is great. So is Mackenzie Hall, is that funded by the city as well?
Yeah, Boghat as well. That's all ours. So we fund that beautiful building. Excellent story in that building, and really, really cool because a lot of folks don't know that used to be the courthouse, right? Mackenzie Hall. And so there's an underground connection. There's a tunnel that actually connects to the Windsor jail. That's where they used to bring the prisoners from the jail to the courthouse, was through this underground tunnel, which I've been in. Many people have had a chance to walk in this tunnel, and it's really a cool thing. We'd love to get control of the Windsor jail, the old Windsor jail, and really turn that into something special, because you don't see places like that anymore. And like there's some real history in those walls that would be worth preserving in my mind. But we'll hopefully be able to get there one day, sooner rather than later. But Mackenzie Hall is important. It's a great performing arts space. We rent that out. Always, that place is always rented for different types of events and meetings and performances, and it's a wonderful space.
It is for sure. The jail, so that's not owned by the city now.
It's not owned by the city. It was owned by the province, and the province tried to sell it. We didn't. We decided not to take it when they were selling it, because there were a number of restrictions that were put on the sale at the time, and so it went out to open market. Someone bought it for $150,000, and hasn't, from what I can tell, hasn't put 10 cents into the building. So I'm fearful of what's happening in the building, but also the front building that's not really the jail. The front part that is on Brock Street is actually the registry building. And so that is a heritage building that we certainly want to make sure is preserved as well. So that particular block with the jail and Mackenzie Hall, I think is to see something like that torn down or just fall down on itself because of lack of maintenance, I think it's a travesty. I'd love to find a way to help preserve that and figure out, what to do in there that allows us to continue to tell the story of what happened in the walls, but maybe, put it in a make it a space that is functional for some other purpose and desirable for people to go to.
Yeah, that'd be really cool to see some of it a museum even, and then maybe another part an event space or something.
Yeah. I mean, they actually at that jail that they performed hangings there. Like the gallows are there, the trap door is there.
Like still to this day.
No, what it's still, yeah, the door is still there. They've removed the hangman's, where the screw and the what do you call it, the hook or whatever, where they used to hang the rope.
Yeah.
But the door is still there, the trap door that they would pull and someone would be hanged. And there were a number of hangings, that happened in that jail. I'm not saying we celebrate that, but that's part of the history of the community, and something that I think, is interesting for people to understand what used to happen in their own community. And that's part of the story.
Yeah, for sure. Now I'm more curious. I'm gonna keep a closer eye on what's going on with that over the next little while.
Absolutely.
Can you explain what the Windsor Mayor's Arts Award is?
Yeah, so the Arts Award is something we do every other year, and we do it in coordination with the Windsor Endowment for the Arts. And so we go through and we select, we kind of jury who the best recipient would be. We actually have cash prizes for the recipients now, and it's just a way for us to sort of tag on to the Windsor Endowment for the Arts, who does a great job, and again further recognize important artists in the community. We've done that for a number of years. We are considering looking at something every year. We haven't made that final decision yet, but nonetheless, even if we don't do it every year, we're going to make sure we keep the relationship with WIA and be part of that award process every other year.
That's cool to hear. Do you guys, when you do that every other year, does that go to just one artist or does it go to a few different people?
I think we have 3, if I'm not mistaken, I believe different awards through the Windsor, the Mayor's Arts Awards.
Okay.
Yep.
That's very cool. Kind of, yeah, like you said, it's just a little extra thing to tag along to the endowment in the ACHF.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Open Streets is a great event for a multitude of reasons, small business, everything like that. But it's also great for artists to be able to, have booths across like every artist in the city that does markets is at that event.
Yeah.
And it's great to, such a popular event. This year, we're moving it back to where it
was started.
Yes. So it's going to be sandwiched to Drouillard.
Yeah, it's the 8 Kilometer route, Sandwich Town out to Ford City and many stops in between.
Yeah.
And so it's a great route. It's the one people are familiar with because we've used that route for most of the time. Yes, last year we switched just to try and keep it fresh and give people a different route to explore and experience. And the issue we have, like, we love open streets. I know the community loves open streets. The issue we have, and then people will say, why don't you do it more often? In other communities, they're able to do it more often. The issue that we really have is getting enough volunteers to do the road closures and keep the event safe. And so you'll see we only do it from 10 till 2. So it's like, I think it's September 21st this year, 10 till 2. And we have a hard time. Like, we literally need more than 100 volunteers just to stand at intersections to make sure cars don't try and, cross, because folks will do that.
Yeah.
And we don't have enough police to man every single intersection. And so you need that many volunteers in order to make it work. And we have a very difficult time even staffing, getting enough volunteers for one event, much less 2.
Well, that's because that was my next question is there plans to maybe do that in May and September? So as a volunteers is a big issue.
That's the central issue for us. And so I actually had them, the admin, look at, can we do it on EC Row Expressway? Could we close EC Row? That's a place you never ride your bike or be able to walk, right?
Yeah.
Could we close one direction on a Sunday for 4 hours? And the artists can come out and set up, and we don't need as many volunteers because you really just need them at the on ramps. And so we looked at that, and then there were just some issues with emergency services. I don't think it's insurmountable, but and ultimately it didn't happen. But I think it could happen, and I think that's the type of thing that will allow us to do too. I think it would actually be fun. I'd love to ride my bike on a Hero Expressway just to experience what it's like, from a pedestrian perspective, and it would be kind of neat. So we'll keep pushing that.
Okay. That's nice to hear. Maybe hopefully, like, try to get the word out too, and just let people know, like, reach out to the city maybe and say like, I'm interested in volunteering.
Yes, that would be incredibly helpful because for us to hire people for 4 hours, it's really impractical. We can't just, grab a few people off the street and hire them. There has to be training. Like there's all this stuff when you're the municipality that has to hire people. It just becomes like prohibitively expensive and impractical to do. So that's why we use volunteers. And we just need more of them. We need more of them for the event in September later on this month, but we also need more if we want to have more events.
I'm sure it's quite costly and probably not practical to have 100 or 50 even police officers out as well, right?
Well, all of the police, like we have a huge amount of police that we bring in to help at major intersections. So you'll see police cruisers at major intersections, controlling traffic there, and we have to keep some of the major intersections at least accessible in case there is an emergency to be able to have police to control emergency vehicles access through and stop pedestrians. And so we use basically it's a mandatory event for auxiliary. We use our regular police officers, and we still need 100 volunteers beyond that.
Wow. That's yeah, that's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, one thing I just wanted to mention on the record was when I was doing research for this interview, I was obviously on the City of Windsor website going over things I want to ask questions about, and I came across the culture section, which I'd been on before when I applied for the ATHF grant, but never really, dove in. And there are so many projects and sources for locals artists to perform, create, apply for grants and projects. And I just wanted to, this is the really question more so. And I just wanted to bring attention, like to draw people to that.
Yeah, they should go there because there's even more on the city's website than we spoke about today, and many other touch points. And so, please go there as a source of information. But again, you don't need to wait to budget time to reach out and have a conversation. You don't need to wait until you bump into me at Costco or city council or at the mall or something. Just send an email. Like if you got some ideas that are, progressive and interesting, and hey, have you guys thought about this? I've seen something in Seattle where they do this, or, other communities that we think would work in Windsor. We'd love to consider it. Even if we can't fund it in a particular year, we'd love to consider how we could build a program that would help support, something that would make the community more exciting and more interesting. That's what we're here to do. It's not just about, for us, it's not just about roads and sewer. That's the core function of what cities do. But we have to have good quality of life. And so I heard, so many times, and there's some guys on city council, using the fact that we have the legacy beacon, the streetcar at the river, and the water feature and the ice rink at City Hall, say, oh my God, these are, I think one of the comments was, spending is out of control at City Hall. No, it's not. It's not out of control, but you have to have those types of amenities in the community to make the place interesting. We have, anyone who's been to our waterfront will say, that's $1 million view. Like that is a beautiful, beautiful waterfront. Now we have a place for people to go with a 10,000 square foot patio where they can sit down, have a snack, have an ice cream, have a drink, alcoholic or otherwise, and see a piece of their history built in. There's no better place than what we built there. At City Hall Square, we have this wonderful water feature, which came about as a function of community dialogue and the community saying, do something more than just an ice rink, because that's only going to get used for a couple months of the year. So we added the water feature and the ice rink, the water feature opened already, but the ice rink will be ready this winter. And you have to have those amenities and those quality of life issues. And so arts is really an important function of that. And so the city's website talks about what we're doing today. But again, my point of even raising this was we need to have these things. Don't be afraid to reach out and share some ideas on how we can make the city better. I don't know everything. There are people who've gone and done things different than me in my life and have different experiences. I need to hear from you to understand, how we can consider the different things you've seen and how they might work in Windsor. And we want to build a community together and make it a real fun, interesting place, because that's how we're going to attract more smart people here to help build and grow the community.
I think just people don't realize that, like they want you want something done, but you just kind of wait around. Like you gotta just reach out and ask. 9 times out of 10 it works.
Yeah, just reach out and I, I've seen you. I don't know how many events doing the work that you do. I'm not even sure I really knew your name, but you're always very friendly and you're very polite as I just appreciate it. And so when you sent the email in and you said, hey, you want to come on the podcast? I said, who's that? Sure down. And then when I saw the picture, I said, I know that guy. He's a really nice guy. I'll go do that for sure. And so like, I'm out everywhere, right? I never stop. And so don't be afraid to come up. Just have a positive conversation. And if we can do it, if we can consider it, I'll tell you, yeah, it's a great idea. Let's get some more information. And sometimes it takes, just as a function of budgeting and programming at the city. I admit sometimes it can take a year or two by the time we put all the pieces together and get the funding in place to be able to move some initiatives forward. But you know what? That doesn't mean we're not working and not trying. Let's figure out how to do it together in a positive, productive way, and we'll continue to build our city so it's great. And people who come here, when they leave, I love when people say, God, I was in Windsor and, it's so different than it was in 1980. It's a beautiful place now. I said, yeah, it is. I'm really proud of this community. And I want everyone to be proud of their own community as well.
There's always going to be people complaining, and those people always talk louder than the ones who are happy about something. But like, I like the new streetcar and the whole thing that like the city did this year at the waterfront's fantastic. And even like, well, I guess it's been 2 years now, but the Rosalie Tremblay statue and just little things like that just makes the city look newer and fresh, right? Over instead of run down and old.
Yeah. And the best part of it, is being able to tell the story. We are the function of the product of all these different municipalities that amalgamated into one in 1935 and then more in 1966. And the stories are so rich, and so one of the things that I talked about, soon after getting elected was theming in District 8, wanting to actually bring alive the story of Sandwichtown, bring alive the story of Walkerville and the Walkerville Distillery District, and Ford City and Riverside. Like there are some great stories that help make the place more interesting when you understand the history and what those stories are. And slowly we're bringing those stories to life. Some of it's through statue, some of it's redoing streetcars. Windsor was why would we build a building adjacent to a 10,000 square foot patio to house a streetcar? Because we were the first city in Canada to have an electric streetcar system back in 1886. In fact, if we had to rebuild the system that was in place in the city of Windsor and all the way out to Amherstburg, if we tried to rebuild that system today, we're estimating it's about $5 billion for us to rebuild that system to put that back in play. Can you imagine? And so when we do road projects like we just did, we redid Sandwich Street, beautiful now.
Mhm.
The tracks, and that system ceased operating in 1938. Okay. The tracks were still there. They had just paved over them. And so we're digging up the old tracks as we redid Sandwich Street from the system that was there in 1886 and ended in 1938. And so that stuff was buried underground. We were able to get some of the old tracks. We got a piece on display. And I think it's important to tell the story of, everyone knows that we're the auto capital, but we really are a transportation leader in our country. We're a transportation leader. And then you build in the Hiram Walker, sorry, I'm going off track.
That's okay.
Building in the Hiram Walker piece on this and why I love, the Hiram Walker story beyond the fact that I love Canadian Club is the story of, Hiram Walker. I always say if it wasn't for Hiram Walker, Windsor would be a shadow of itself. Hiram Walker came over from Detroit. He was doing a little bit of distillation of alcohol in Detroit, but he was actually distilling vinegar. That was his big thing in Detroit. He came over because of the temperance movement. He saw an opportunity on this side of the border. He set up this distillery in 1858. It's the largest distillery in North America, still in operation in our city. And because of the success that he had through Canadian Club, he paid for the police and the fire and the sewers and the streetlights. And, he had all of the services there in a way that we didn't quite have in the city of Windsor at the time. And so why is that important? Well, when a little guy named Henry Ford said, I'm going to go over to Windsor, and I see an opportunity, and he took a ferry boat over to Windsor and met a guy named Gordon McGregor. The two of them decided to build a factory directly adjacent to the distillery because they were able to pull the services very, very easily that existed in Walkerville. That was the birth of Ford City, and that was the birth of Windsor being the auto capital of Canada, a title that we still hold till today. And so this history, if you don't tell it, people just, you can drive by and they say, oh, that's a distillery, but you got to tell the story and explain why it's important to today and why we call ourselves the auto capital. And that's just one little story. There's lots of different inputs for Riverside and Sandwich Town that, help build on the connections in the story as well. And so the thinning and districting idea was, how do we bring these areas to life? Because they are authentic in their own right. Like Walkerville is a hugely authentic area where people live. There are businesses there. You have the private sector buying up buildings and turning them into restaurants and bars. And so that's not the city, that's the private sector. Like they're doing that, which is great. How do we lead in and help get more and generate more economic development? And how do we theme it so that when people come to that area, they're like, wow, that's, like we go to the distillery district in Toronto, really a cool area. Gosh, Windsor, it's still an active distillery. You should see what they've done in Windsor. And hopefully that leads to more people wanting to come here, which is great. Hopefully the people, we do stuff for the people who live here. So, we wouldn't do it unless it was great for the people who lived here. But the byproduct is when you bring someone here or someone visits, they have a place to go, and then they leave and say, oh, you should go to Windsor or stop in Windsor when you're there. You should hear the story of Al Capone and, the Prohibition story and do the tour. And you can just, start building on the authenticity that exists there. And that authenticity is no more alive than it is in Walkerville. I mean, that's an incredible area. But Sandwich Town's right there too. It's got a lot of the old bones and the stories are there, and which is why the jail project, I think, is the jail itself is really an important project for Windsor to figure out what to do.
What was that a city decision to take all the park commuters out of Sandwich Town?
Yeah. So off of Brock Street there, it tends the direction of the road. Yeah, it was. And so the person, it's really a I don't know if it's interesting, but it's a bit frustrating too. The story about the owner of the jail. That parking lot where people park for Mackenzie Hall is actually owned by the owner of the jail. It actually is part of the jail property and not part of the city's asset.
Oh,
And so when he bought the jail for 150 grand, he leases the parking lot to the city. And sorry, I'll call him back. So he leases the parking lot to the city, which we pay for the ability for people to park there and access Mackenzie Hall. We're getting to the point where just the numbers don't make sense for this. So we said, we've got enough street parking. We'll just change the direction of the street. We'll allow people to park on the street for free. And that way, we're resolving the issue, and, people can still park in the lot, but we have a lot of extra parking now right across the street from Mackenzie Hall that people can access.
that's nice. A history question for you, I guess. So Wilstead Manor, that was Hiram Walker's house, correct?
It wasn't his house. Hiram Walker was dead, but his son Edward Chandler is the one who built that house. So Edward built the house. His wife and Edward and his wife Mary lived there for a period of time. Edward died. Mary continued to live there, but it's, as you know, a big place, right? And so ultimately they bestowed that house to the city of Windsor. The city took it. It was vacant for a while. Then it was operated as a library. And so some people in Windsor who are alive today remember it as the Willistead Library. And then it had a number of, I think it was an art gallery at one point too, operated out of there. And then ultimately the city said, you know what, we're going to restore this, use it as an event space. And so what you see today is, what the city's done. And we have spent a lot of money there. Old buildings are expensive to maintain, but they're critically important to the character and the story of the city. And so we're proud to do it. And we couldn't do it without the help of like the Rotary Club, who holds Art in the Park. They donate the proceeds of Art in the Park to Willistead to help keep. So it's Art in the Park is a great community of that, but it's also a fundraiser that generates money thanks to the Rotary Club to invest back into Willistead. And so it's a really well-used facility. People know at Christmas time, how the volunteers decorate, the Friends of Willistead and the volunteers decorate that space. And I think last year was a great example that every single space on every tour was sold out. People just love going through and seeing the manor, in its full glory. And so it was that, when you walk in, you'll see a portrait of Edward Chandler. And that portrait had actually gone to the Corcoran Gallery in Washington, D.C. That gallery went out of business, and we had to, the Friends of Willistead actually had to petition the Attorney General of the United States to have the painting released so that it could come back to Canada. And now that painting hangs on the wall. The original owner, the builder of Willistead Manor, when you walk in, you'll see him right to the left when you walk up the main stairs. And he's overlooking everyone who comes into his house. So it's really a cool story.
That is cool. I love the history stories like that, and thankful for my job. I get to go to Wilstead Manor all the time for work, so I'm always in and out of there, which is great. But so many people haven't been, and yeah, it's nice that the city runs the tours and all that stuff as well.
Yeah, lots of events there, and it really is a great space, and it's such an important part of the whole story of Walkerville. Hiram Walker actually built the Brand Center on the riverfront, and so that opened in 1894. That was Hiram Walker's uh, construction of his head office. His corporate office is on that site, and that building is model. I think that's probably the nicest building in the city. And that is modeled after the Pandolfini Palace in Florence, Italy. So he brought marble in from different countries all around the world. There's 8 or 9 fireplaces. Each fireplace has marble from a different country. And if you go on Google and you search up the Pandolfini Palace in Florence, you will see the similarities of the Pandolfini Palace and what Hiram Walker built on the waterfront in the city of Windsor, which would help explain why, and you may not know this, but for 9 years since they've closed the Brand Center, I have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to find a pathway with Beam Suntory, who actually has the lease rights on the building, to open that up again and let the public back in to see this building. It was the second largest tourist attraction in our region, next to the casino, before it closed. And so I just love this building. And I know people who've been in there can appreciate and understand the importance of the historic importance of the building, the beauty of the building. And it is where the sizzling part of it is. It's where Al Capone came during, Prohibition, and actually the speakeasies in the basement in Hazingwood and Speakeasy. And that's where they did the deals during Prohibition. Moving a lot of alcohol made in Canada over to the United States, even though the Bill of Lading might have said it was going to Cuba. It ended up in lots of different places. And so it's part of the sizzle. It's the sizzle to the steak, of the story that is part of Windsor's history.
I can't believe it's really been 9 years since that's crazy to me now. It does not feel like it's been that long, but
And that was, back when I was a younger guy, that was the premier place in the city of Windsor to go for wedding photographs. It was the preeminent place that you would try and get into, and they limited access. You had to actually be, for a period of time, you actually had to know someone like an executive at Hiram Walker to get access to get back there for weddings. Then, when they stopped using it as a corporate office, they rented it out. And then since Beam has vacated the building, they've done very, very basic maintenance. And so it really needs to be brought back to its glory, because it is a special spot.
yeah, I used to shoot in there at the start of my career when I first started doing weddings, and it's been apparently 9 years, but it does not feel like that. I love history. It's the best. Thanks for the history lesson. I appreciate it.
It's just such a cool space. And we're doing everything we can to try and get that back open for the public to enjoy.
The last thing I want to ask you about is if there's anything you want to say about the mayor's mic.
Yeah, so I thank you for this. I've enjoyed doing this podcast. We actually have we've started something called the Mayor's Mic, and we're starting to build on it. And basically, it's not exactly this. We want to have conversations, but maybe not as long as this. It really was meant to be just a short snippet of things that are going on to try and give people a trusted source of information. There's so much coming at you, and I see all sorts of things on social media that, it's just not true, right? And I know some people are actually buying the things that aren't true. And so we see, the president of the United States putting out lots of things that are untrue, and he makes up his own stories. I want to make sure people know why you make certain decisions. I don't think there's any real magic to what we do in terms of, like, if people had the same set of information that city council gets, I think 99% of the time we're actually going to come to the same conclusion in terms of how to handle the situation when you have all the information. So Mayor's Mike, thanks for mentioning it. You can visit, my website, and we put it on our social media accounts as well. And it's supposed to be that place where you go to get certain snippets on information that help inform how we came to certain decisions and why we made certain decisions.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again very much, Connor. Wonderful chat. My pleasure. Thanks for watching, everybody. All right. That's great. There it is. Thank you again very much.
Okay, my pleasure.
It's much appreciated. Yeah, my pleasure.